Hey folks, I've been sitting around thinking about the times that I had psychic phenomena happen in my life. When at first I thought about this idea of talking about this, I really didn't think I'd remember very many episodes that I had that were significant. But I have maybe two or three that stood out in my head that were, this is pretty weird, this is a bit different than what normally happens in my life. And when I say spiritual or psychic phenomena, what do I mean? And I'm not really restricting it. It's all sorts of different little things. And some of them are a bit bigger. Some of them are, that could be spiritual or psychic phenomena, or it could be something else, it could just be coincidence or something like that. But then I have some coincidences that are really amazing, they're sticking your nose at you to tell you, hey man, some pretty coincidental things can happen. And then other times it just goes beyond that. So at the beginning, I'd like to talk earlier on when I was messing around with spiritual stuff, psychic phenomena. But I've been playing with dowsing. And the reason I've been playing with it is because my friend Juan had a dowsing kit from his dad, who was a geologist or something like that. And it was, somebody had gone through a lot of trouble. There was an actual kit. It had a pendulum in it, and it had a handheld device that sort of had a part that would turn around like this. It would just roll freely. And that one was very interesting because it had an antenna. Literally, you could screw onto it a little antenna tip and extend it as far as you wanted. And you could screw it open, unscrew it, and inside there's a little chamber, and you could put some stuff in there that you were looking for. So let's say you were looking for copper, you could put some copper in there and then do some dowsing for the copper. Maybe that would help it. And there was another one I remember had a spring to it, but I'm not sure what it was for. I'm not sure what the spring was. Maybe a pendulum, maybe. Hard to say. Anyway, but this, I really liked the one with the stick that went like that. The pendulum was always pretty cool because you could. The idea there is that if you would put in your mind what you're looking for, and it was supposed to, you were getting it to go in a circle like this, and when it would suddenly stop and start going in a line like that, then that would tell you that it's in that direction. And so you had to stand there having it go around, and all of a sudden it would just start going like that. You had to be very careful in there, not consciously affecting it, because there was nothing to get it to go from a circle to a straight line. So we had some friends. We had a little bunch of get-together in my apartment, and in the living room, which wasn't very big, let me tell you, 10 by 10 maybe. And there was quite a few people in there, but we decided to try it. And so I had a knife that I had bought a while ago, and it was something that meant something to me, like I'd had it for many years. And so I gave them this knife to hide in the room. And I was supposed to come in and try to find it. It was my turn. And the idea of how to find it is, okay, so like I told you, it goes like this, and you get your line like that. But that's just a line. It could be going on forever. So you go to another spot in the room or wherever you are, and you do another line, and where those two lines intersect, that's where the item is. So that's what happened with me. I did that, and it pointed over a line like that, and I went and stood over there. Everybody was looking at me, and I had never really done it very much anymore before that. And so I did it, and then they gave me a line, and I said, well, it's underneath Ward's leg in the chair. And he looked at me and he goes, bullshit, because it's exactly where it was. So I don't know that I had that much success with the pendulum after that, but I did have, following that with the same series of experiments, I had a rock that, again, I had found years before, and I'd always kept, it sort of looked like a skull to me, and made of quartz and had a crystal underneath it, and I liked that. So I went to a field. There was a football field at the school nearby, and there's a bunch of kids playing there. And I gave them a rock and I said, hey kids, go hide this rock in this field. It was late at night. You couldn't really see much beyond maybe 10, 15 feet. And they went off and they came back and they had hidden it. And so I did again. I did that pendulum. And I got my triangulation, and it was way at the end. We had to walk right at the end, and I came bang on to where my rock was. So that's pretty impressive at the time. But I don't know that I had much success about it after that. I guess I started second-guessing my results, thinking about it too much, analyzing the thing. Made it very difficult to figure out really what was going on. Another thing that I was thinking about that happened when I was younger is, again, it's not really spiritual. It has to do with being sick. And it sort of talks about the reserves that somebody might have that are just sitting there waiting to be called upon, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. The first one, I was fairly young. I guess I was 17, 18 years old. I was living on Kent Street in Ottawa with my brother and his friend. And I was about 5 blocks away from my house. It was the middle of winter. It was freezing cold, minus 20 outside. And I was sick as a dog. I was on the sidewalk walking home, and I had a flu cold type of thing. And it was a situation where your head it becomes so stuffy that the brain, the thoughts can't move around, so you're foggy. You're and I was like, my head's just buzzing, and I just, feeling sort of feverish and really not well. And I was standing there, and I suddenly became aware of how sick I was, and this fogginess in my head, and all of a sudden I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it anymore. I got angry internally, very, very angry, and I started walking home much faster at a brisker pace, quite angry about being this sick, and this was going to be it. That's it. I'm done with this. And by the time I got home, I had these 5 blocks to walk. By the time I got home, the flu was gone. It was absolutely gone. My head was clear. I had no stuffy head, no sniffly nose, no fever, nothing. So that's pretty weird. I can't quite explain that one. And then I had another one. It was with another friend. There's no friend there with that last one. But this was with a fellow named Wayne. And we had gone up to the cottage to spend a few days there. My parents had driven us up. It was winter. And I like the idea of going up there in winter. We could get a fire going and stay cozy inside and go exploring in the snow. There's all sorts of things we could do. So I found... We arrived, and the minute we arrived, I started feeling unwell. I just wasn't feeling tip-top, And with every passing moment, I was feeling less well, and I let Wayne know, I'm not feeling quite right here, and within another few minutes, I'm shivering, and I've got to lie underneath a blanket, and I'm lying in bed. We haven't even started the fire, and I am just done in. And I realized that this isn't. I'm not going along. I'm sliding down the slope here, and pretty soon, I'm going to be at a point where I'm going to need to get to the hospital or something. I'm feeling really bad, and I'm here out at the cottage. There's no electricity, no telephone. We don't have cell phones. It was before the time of cell phones, anyway. And my parents are gone. We don't even have a car. We had a prearranged time in the 3 or 4 days for them to come pick us up, and. So we realized we have to get out. We have to get out now, right now. But I'm already really sick, and I realized I have to get. And I realized I don't have any choice. I have to get up, and I have to go, and I have to pull some energy from myself, from within, somewhere. Just pull something to get myself going. And suddenly, I was getting up. I stood up, and I was filled with the most incredible energy. And we put on our snowshoes, and off we went. And I was like, just moving along, and ended up arriving at the end of the road. And there was a fellow there were some people living in houses there. There was electricity, telephones, and all that. That's where we were going, see if we could call them home, And there's a fellow outside, and I go, hey, we need some help. I'm sick. And he goes, who's sick? I said, I am. And he goes, your friend is sick? And I said, no, me. Because I was so full of energy, I radiated just energy. I didn't radiate sickness in any way. And he says, I called home from his telephone. He let us in. I called, and my father answered. He said he'd come to meet us in Feralton, where there was a hospital. He said, go to that hospital in Feralton, in Wakefield, excuse me, not Feralton. So the fellow said, I can drive you down to Wakefield. So we got in the car, and off we went. And again, I still had at that point all the energy we needed. We got to the place. We entered. My parents had just arrived, and I went to the nurse, gave her my information, and turned around. And as I walked towards my the place to sit down, I sort of started going sideways and just collapsed in the arms of my father and my friend Wayne. And I was out. And for the next 3 days, I barely remember anything. I was just in this fog, fever-induced, very sick. Turned out Wayne had caught this bug, and when we met, I caught it right away. I don't know how, but I just caught it, and by the time we got into the cottage, I had the flu. But again, is that psychic? That I got better like that, just like that? Or is that, an interesting, meaningful phenomena? It's hard to say, Now, I had another one. This is a different type of thing that happened. And it falls in the realm of coincidences. And again, this is quite a while ago. At some point, I'd worked at a radio station, and I had a poetry show. And I would interview these poets who would come along, and they would give me these piles of poems that I would go through and select some. And this was years before, and I was living at 1410 Bank Street, Fairno. It was the corner of Fairno and Bank Street, and I was living with my brother in this rotten little apartment. There's lots of funny stories about that place. First place I sort of lived in, with my brother. But I noticed in my files this folder, and I open it up, and I recognize it. These are these poems from this girl who had passed me this file some 3 years before. Somehow I still had this, and I was looking at the file, and a lot of these things were all handwritten. They all looked like single copies, these things that this girl would want to have back. And I said, well, maybe I have a phone number here. But I found a phone number in there. It was in Toronto, and it was 3 years ago. So I called in Toronto, and I got an answer. But the person said no, that she had moved away, and gave me a number that might be a forwarding number. I tried that number, still in Toronto, and that person again said no, she doesn't live here anymore, but she's moved off to her mother's, and I got the phone number to her mother's. And her mother was in Ottawa, which was where I was. And I thought, hey, I'm getting closer, So I called her mother. Mother gave me her phone number. I called her, identified myself, and started talking about these poems. And I said, look, I've got these poems of yours. I'd be happy to just drive down and give them to you if you'd like. Just let me know where you live, and I'll go and bring them to you. And she says, well, I live on 5 Fairno Street. And I go, Fairno? I said, I know Fairno. I go, that's my street. And I said, where do you live on Fairno? And she says, well, I live in this red brick building at the corner. And I've been sitting on the phone like this all the while. I've been sitting looking through the window at the red brick building right there. That's where she lived. I literally went outside, went down the stairs, went across the street, went up the stairs, knocked on her door. She accepted the poems, and we laughed for a few seconds, and off I came home. Now that's an amazing coincidence. It's on the edge of, like disbelief. That can't have happened by accident. Like somehow, how did she end up living right across the street from me after 3 years? And that I would have her poems and think about giving them back to her. Very odd. Now I have another coincidence that is also pretty amazing. And that was much more important. In the business I had, the bookstore, years and years ago, there was this situation where suddenly, from one thing to another, through no fault of our own, really, we ended up having a sudden debt that just appeared in front of us. We had to pay, I think it was about $6,000. And that was unheard of for us. We really didn't have a lot of money. I had no way of coming up with the $6,000 in any normal manner. So I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. It was a pretty desperate time. And this was just happening sequentially. We had gotten these news, and the next morning we arrive at the store, and we're walking down the street. I'm walking down the street, coming to the entrance, and there's a tenant who lives upstairs who's standing in front of the store. And he's like this, no, don't go in, don't go in, don't go in. And, it's always a bad sign. Why does he not want me to go into my store? I'm going to go in my store. So it turns out somebody upstairs had kicked a water heater, and it had been leaking all night. And we had just finished doing a pile of renovations. The store had rebuilt these units, completely done, just finished. And I walked in, and we could see it from the entrance that the carpet was shiny. In fact, it wasn't a carpet at all, it was a lake. And it had been dripping water on this unit that I had just rebuilt. And it was presswood. And the presswood had swollen up, and there was all these boxes of presswood, they were all filled with books, and in many cases the books had swollen with water and had swollen the shelves all tight, and you couldn't even pull the books out. It was just one pile of mess. The wood was destroyed, the unit was destroyed, the books were destroyed. It was just gone. And I was lost. I know that my wife was standing in the corner or on the other side. She was crying. And I was lost. I was standing, I think I was standing like this, and in my head I'm going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And then suddenly it hits me, insurance. We have insurance. And then all of a sudden it hits me as well that the insurance might very well pay this instant $6,000 debt that had just appeared in front of us. So it's exactly how it happened. I got a claim with the insurance, and it was pretty well. I had my check from the insurance company, and I put it in the bank. I wrote the check to the people I had to pass the $6,000 to, and it was gone. I literally didn't keep it for a day. I didn't benefit from the insurance. I just had to pay this, and it went in and out. And it was an amazing situation, a coincidence, an event that seemed bad at the time. And in fact, when I remember, after I'd taken away old books, we were in a bookstore. Books had no real cost, comparatively speaking. We had always more books. There's always more books. So the fact that they were gone from the shelf didn't matter so much. And I just bought some lumber and rebuilt it overnight, a weekend. And we within 2 or 3 days, it was back to normal. Everything was done, and they were refilled with books, and it was how we went on. Quite a surprising turn of a situation. So that's a coincidence, and one that's goes hey, that's pretty amazing coincidence. I wonder And I've read some books about some coincidences that defy imagination. Colin Wilson's written some amazing ones. Well, I'm about halfway through my psychic memories, so I think I'll take a break here, and we can come back to this in part 2. So I guess we'll see you then. Thanks for coming along in my memories.